Ah, tonight, I'll tell you the story of a place that no longer shows on any map. A little town named Velwick that once sat tucked between silver hills and sleeping forests. It was a quiet place, not forgotten, just remembering itself in silence. The streets were lined with cobblestone that hummed under the feet of anyone who walked them, and the lanterns along the road flickered not just with flame, but with old stories. In Velwick, everything had a heart. The wind that blew through the hollowed-out oaks, the rain that slid lazily down window panes, and even the chimneys, which puffed out soft spirals like sleepy sighs. But what made Velwick truly special was that it was a town that dreamed. Not the people, mind you, but the town itself. Each night, when the last child had been tucked in and the final door latch clicked closed, the houses, the roads, the trees, and the stones would slip into their own kind of slumber, where they'd dream of things long past and things yet to come. And the dreams were vivid, painted in colors no one had ever seen, filled with songs not yet sung, and whispers from the places far beyond the reach of daylight. There was one boy in Velwick who could hear these dreams, not with his ears, but with his heart. His name was Milo, a quiet, curious boy with eyes like stormy skies and a small scar just above his left brow. The kind you get from climbing trees that don't want to be climbed. Milo didn't speak much, but he listened. Oh, how he listened. He could feel the sigh of the ground under his feet and the soft ache in the roof tiles when they missed the touch of the sun. And every night, just as the world slipped into sleep, Milo would lay in his bed, eyes open, ears tuned not to the outside world, but to the hush and hum of Velwick's dreaming. And one night, one rainy, perfectly quiet night like this one, Velwick dreamed something different, something deeper, something that would change everything. But I'll tell you more about that in the next part, little dreamer. For now, just close your eyes and let the raindrops lull you as Velwick begins to dream again in your heart. Now then, let Grandpa pull you in closer under this soft quilt of story, because what happened that night in Velwick had never happened before. Not in all the years the town had been quietly dreaming in its slumber. You see, while Velwick usually dreamt of simple things, glowing rivers, singing foxes, skies that turned to velvet at dusk, this night was different. It began with a soft trembling beneath the cobblestones, like the first sleepy stretch of something that had been still for too long. The wind didn't blow like it usually did. Instead, it paused, as if leaning in to listen. And Milo, tucked under his patched-up quilt in his attic room, sat straight up without knowing why. His little attic window, fogged and spotted with rain, began to glow with the palest blue light, a hue that shimmered like the edge of a dream slipping away just before you can remember it. Milo climbed from his bed, pulled on his wool socks, and tiptoed toward the window. What he saw made him press both palms to the glass. The town square, the center of Velwick, the old clock tower, the fountain with the stone bird, was glowing. Not from the moon, not from lanterns, but from the ground itself. A soft, shimmering mist hovered like a breath just exhaled, and the buildings surrounding the square began to flicker, almost like they were blinking in sleep. Milo's heart beat slowly, steadily, not with fear, but with a strange kind of peace, the kind that comes when something ancient remembers your name. Without waking his parents, Milo crept down the crooked staircase each wooden step groaning like an old storyteller, and slipped out into the night. The rain kissed his cheeks gently as he walked barefoot across the cobbled street, drawn by something he didn't understand but trusted completely. When he reached the glowing square, he saw something waiting for him, something tall, cloaked in silver mist, with a voice that sounded like wind through the trees and eyes as deep as the night itself. It knelt down slowly to meet him, this shape made of dream and light and quiet, and it whispered, "You are the one who listens, and tonight Velwick has something to tell you." Milo didn't run. He didn't even flinch. He simply nodded, as if some part of him had been waiting for this all along, and in that moment the dreaming of the town deepened into something ancient, something sacred, something only a quiet heart like Milo's could understand. Well now, where were we, my dear? Ah, yes, young Milo standing in the glowing square under the watchful eyes of the town's dream, that gentle, misty figure who had emerged not from shadow, but from memory itself. The creature, if it could be called that, had no face as we understand it, no mouth or nose, no hands or feet. Yet Milo felt its presence as clearly as warm breath on a winter window. It radiated calm, a hush that reached into the bones. Around them, the buildings creaked ever so slightly, stretching in their sleep like cats sunbathing in morning light, and even the clock tower, whose rusty bell hadn't rung in decades, let out a low, dreamy hum. The mist figure raised a hand-shaped shimmer and touched Milo's forehead, not physically, but in the way a thought might touch the heart. And in that instant, Milo was no longer standing in the square. He was falling gently into a vision, not a fall that frightened, but one that cradled, as if the town itself had taken him in its arms. All around him, scenes unfurled. Velwick, as it was 100 years ago, when carriages rumbled through its streets and children chased hoop and stick down lanes where laughter echoed for miles. He saw the original builders, quiet folk with kind hands, shaping the stone with song, pouring dreams into every brick, every lantern hook, every doorknob. Then the vision twisted like a page being turned, and he saw what the town feared, the creeping silence that had begun to curl in at its edges, the forgetting. You see, Velwick had been built on remembrance, but people had begun to forget to listen to the whispers of the trees, to greet the old fountain each morning, to pause and feel the rhythm beneath their feet. And with every forgotten ritual, Velwick's dream had grown fainter, like a lantern slowly dimming in the fog. The figure's voice entered Milo's mind again, no louder than a feather falling. "The town needs someone to remember again," it said, "not just the past, but how to listen, how to love it quietly." Milo's heart tightened, but not in fear. It was the ache of understanding, of knowing you've been chosen not for your strength, but for your stillness. When the vision faded, he was back in the square. The misty figure was gone, but the glow lingered like the warmth of a hand recently held, and in Milo's hand, which had been empty before, now rested a single brass key, old and ornate, with carvings shaped like roots and stars. Somewhere in the town, a door was waiting, a door no one had opened in a long, long time. The rain still tapping gently at the windows, and the night hasn't let go just yet. Now listen closely, because from here things in Velwick grew even quieter, as if the whole town was holding its breath for what Milo would do next. The brass key in his hand pulsed with a soft warmth, almost like a heartbeat, and the carvings on it shimmered faintly under the lantern glow. Milo stood there for a while in the middle of the square, unsure where to go, but the keys seemed to hum against his palm, pointing him, not with direction, but with feeling. So he followed the pull, down winding alleys that smelled of moss and stone, past sleepy homes with curtained windows and cats curled in chimneys. Milo walked barefoot and sure, as if the stones beneath him whispered, "This way, little one, this way." The rain had slowed now, becoming a mist that clung to the air like breath on glass, and the clouds above glowed faintly as if the stars were peeking through from behind. He turned a corner and stopped before a door he had never noticed before, even though he had passed it many times. It sat snugly between the baker's back wall and the old luthier's workshop, hidden behind a veil of ivy that rustled gently even without wind. The door was made of a dark wood that looked older than the town itself, its surface carved with spirals and symbols Milo didn't understand but somehow recognized. The key in his hand warmed again. Slowly, reverently, he brushed aside the ivy and inserted the key. It clicked with a sound like distant thunder, not loud, but deep, like something ancient stirring from its slumber. The door creaked open, revealing a spiral staircase that led downward into a warm, golden light. Without fear, without hesitation, Milo stepped inside. The air was scented with old paper and lavender, and the light flickered like candlelight, though he saw no flame. The stairs curved and curved until they ended in a circular room that looked like a memory someone had built with their hands. Walls lined with shelves of books that glowed faintly, small fountain bubbling in the center and floating above it, a sphere of light that pulsed like a sleeping heart. As Milo approached, the room whispered his name, not aloud, but in a way that made the hair on his arm stand up, like an old friend calling from a dream. And then, with a sound like pages turning, the light spoke. "Welcome, listener. The town remembers you." And just like that, Milo knew. This wasn't just a place of memory. It was the very heart of Velwick's dreaming. Ah, yes, part 5, my sweet listener. Let me wrap this chapter around you like a warm blanket, while the rain plays its quiet lullaby. Down in the golden chamber, beneath Velwick, where dreams lived like breath and memory, young Milo stood beneath the glowing sphere, the air thick with the hum of stories not yet spoken. The room was alive, not in a way that startled, but in a way that comforted, like the gentle creak of an old rocking chair or the familiar hush of a bedtime song. Around him, the glowing books on the shelves flickered softly as if sighing, as if each spine held a heartbeat waiting to be read. But they didn't call to him, not yet. Instead, the sphere floated lower, pulsing slowly, and Milo reached out instinctively. When his fingers brushed the light, he didn't feel heat or cold, but a sensation like sinking into the softest part of a dream. His mind filled with whispers, not in words, but in images. Children laughing under cherry blossoms long faded, a baker humming while kneading bread no one remembered, a cat who once guarded the steps of the clock tower every evening before dusk. These were the town's forgotten moments, little pieces of life that had slipped away when no one was listening anymore. And Milo? Milo was the first to listen again. The sphere's voice returned, deeper now, as if it came from the very stone below his feet. These are Velwick soul fragments. You are chosen to remember them. to keep them alive. The floor around the fountain began to shimmer and shift, revealing 7 small doors hidden in the stone, each marked with a symbol, a leaf, a bell, a flame, a river, a star, a bird, and a sleeping eye. Milo instinctively understood these were not doors in the usual sense. They led into memories, places and times within the dream where pieces of Velwick's heart had been lost. The task wasn't to find them, but to feel them, to walk through each one and carry back the warmth, the song, the color of what had once been. "But why me?" Milo whispered, not out of fear but wonder. And the light answered with such softness that it felt like a mother's breath. "Because you are quiet enough to hear us, because you still believe." Milo looked at the 7 doors and felt no burden, only belonging. Somewhere far above, the clock tower gave a single chime, though no one had wound it in years. The dreaming had begun to stir again, and Milo took a deep breath, ready to step through the first door. "All right now, cuddle in closer, little one." The rain's grown steady again, like a heartbeat against the roof. Let Grandpa tell you what happened when Milo chose the first door. It was the one marked with a leaf, carved delicately, as if by wind itself. The moment Milo touched the symbol, the stone beneath his feet shimmered and softened, becoming something like moss, like memory. The door opened not outward, but inward into a forest that no longer stood on any map, a forest that once grew on the edge of Velwick when the town was still young and full of wandering feet. Milo stepped forward and found himself bathed in a dusky green glow. The trees here were enormous and gently luminous, their trunks wide and warm like ancient guardians, their leaves whispering secrets that made the air hum with forgotten songs. The scent was wild and comforting, like wet bark and elderberries. But this forest wasn't empty. No, it was alive with echoes. Children's laughter fluttered through the leaves, and once in a while Milo could see flickers of boys and girls running barefoot between trees, gathering acorns in little pouches, building fairy huts beneath roots, their voices never louder than the wind. As he wandered deeper, he found an old wooden swing still tied between 2 trees, swaying slightly, though no breeze touched it, and sitting on the swing, not quite a ghost, but not quite solid, was a small girl with wild curly hair and eyes full of mischief. She looked up and smiled at Milo, not startled by his presence, as though she'd been waiting for him all along. "You remembered," she said. Her voice sounded like the clink of buttons in a jar. This place was forgotten when they cut down the last trees to build the shops. But it still dreamed. We all still dreamed. Milo felt a warmth in his chest that almost made him cry. Not from sadness, but from the weight of something beautiful that had been almost lost. He walked with the girl through the woods, listening to the laughter, touching the bark, watching the memories bloom like fireflies around him. And when he finally turned back toward the glowing doorway, the girl placed something in his hand. A single leaf, golden and whole, soft as silk, warm as bread. "Take it with you," she whispered. "Let the town remember green." With that, the door eased closed behind him, and Milo was once again in the golden chamber, the leaf still in his palm, glowing faintly like it had a tiny sun inside. 1 door down, 6 to go, and the dream was growing stronger. Let the rain sing softly in the background, and let Grandpa continue. After returning from the forest memory, with the golden leaf still warm in his hand, Milo didn't hesitate. He stepped closer to the second small door, the one marked with a bell. This symbol was etched not in stone, but in shimmering silver, like the glint of moonlight on still water. As his fingers touched it, the golden chamber seemed to inhale, yes, child, like a breath held, and then exhaled in the softest ring, a bell's chime that echoed not in the ears, but in the heart. The door opened, and with it, the world changed again. Milo now stood in the center of an old stone chapel, long forgotten beneath layers of time. Dust hung in shafts of light that filtered through cracked stained glass windows, painting the pews in colors that shimmered like a dream half remembered. This was the chapel of Velwick's heart, built before the town had streets or names for its buildings. It was where people came not only to pray, but to sing, to gather, to marry, to mourn, a place where moments stacked upon moments like stones in a tower, sacred not because of what was spoken, but because of what was shared. Milo stepped forward, and the sound greeted him. Not noise, no, but music. Soft choral hums drifting like incense through the nave. It wasn't a choir he could see. It was as if the walls remembered every voice that had ever echoed through them. Old women whispering lullabies, children learning their first songs, lovers exchanging trembling vows. At the front of the chapel was a bell, not grand, not towering, but humble and lovely. It hung crookedly now, rust crawling along its edge, but still it gleamed faintly. Milo approached and placed his hand gently on its side, and in that instant the entire chapel filled with a sound so warm, so full, that it almost brought him to his knees. It wasn't loud, oh no, but deep and bright and sorrowful all at once. A sound that said, "We were here, we mattered, don't forget us." As the chime faded, something small dropped from the bell's hollow, a silver ribbon, soft as rain, tied around a tiny charm shaped like a heart. Milo caught it, and the moment he did, the chapel shimmered into light, becoming dust and memory once more. He stepped back into the golden chamber, now holding the ribbon with the leaf tucked in his pocket. 2 pieces of Velwick's dream, reclaimed. The remaining doors flickered with anticipation, and the sphere above pulsed with a rhythm stronger than before. The rhythm of a town slowly waking from a long, gentle sleep. Grandpa's still right here, and the fire in this tale is just beginning to glow. When Milo turned to the third door, the one marked with a flame, it shimmered not red, but golden orange, like the last light of a campfire at midnight. The mark itself flickered softly, as if it were made of real fire sealed beneath the stone. When his fingers touched it, the air around him warmed instantly, and the door opened with a low whoosh, like someone gently blowing on embers. Milo stepped into a small, round room, a hearth room, cozy and circular, with stone walls and wooden beams that creaked gently with age. At the center, a fire crackled in a wide hearth, surrounded by mismatched chairs and wool blankets. But this room was not empty, no. It was full of shadows, not frightening, but comforting ones. The kinds of shadows made by old storytellers, by families sharing soup on cold evenings, by hands knitting quietly while others listened. Around the fire, he saw flickers of people, elders from long ago, leaning forward to tell their tales, their eyes glinting with memory and kindness. A boy leaned into his grandfather's shoulder. A mother brushed her daughter's hair beside the fire. A man, weathered from years of toil, recited the tale of the stars to anyone who would listen. These were Velwick's evenings once long ago, when every home was a lighthouse and firelight brought hearts closer. Milo sat down quietly, and as he did, a bowl of soup appeared in his hands, warm, fragrant, filled with things that tasted like childhood. No one spoke to him directly, yet he felt their presence deeply. Stories were being shared around him, and they invited him not with words, but with warmth. As he listened, a small object clinked against the stone near the hearth, a tiny iron key, shaped like a flame. It seemed out of place, yet perfectly meant for him. He picked it up gently, and the fire shifted. The room dimmed slowly, its warmth folding around him like a farewell hug. And just like that, he was back in the golden chamber, the iron flame key now beside the leaf and ribbon. The sphere above him glowed more steadily now, the dream pulsing richer with every step he took. And though Milo had only stepped into memory, his heart had grown fuller, as if those fires had once warmed him too, long before he ever entered the chamber. The next door, marked with a river's wave, shimmered cool and blue, waiting patiently. Well now, the night's grown deeper, the rain a little softer, like the earth is breathing easy. Are you still warm and listening? Good, because Milo turned next to the fourth door, the one with a gentle swirling wave carved into it. The symbol shimmered a pale, silvery blue, as if moonlight danced across its surface. When Milo touched it, a cool breeze swept across the golden chamber, and he suddenly smelled the scent of river stones, moss, and the faint sweetness of lilies. The door opened not with a creak, but with the sound of trickling water, and he stepped forward into a world that moved, not fast, not slow, but with the steady rhythm of a quiet current. He found himself standing on a small boat, drifting down a wide, glassy river. Mist floated above the water like half-forgotten dreams, and willows lined the banks, their branches trailing the surface in gentle caresses. The oar in his hand moved without effort, and the river steered itself as though it knew where he needed to go. Along the banks, scenes from the past drifted into view like reflections. There were children skipping stones, a father teaching his son to fish, two friends laughing as they crossed on stepping stones during spring's first melt. These moments, soft and simple, carried the soul of Velwick's river, the one that once ran through the town before time and progress buried it beneath streets and concrete. Milo noticed that every memory was wrapped in peace. No grand events, no loud victories, just life, flowing gently, honestly. As he passed under an arch of vines, a small object floated down from the mist above and landed in the boat beside him. It was a smooth stone with a spiral etched into it, cool to the touch, humming softly with a rhythm like a heartbeat. The river then slowed and curved inward, fading into a calm silver pool. The boat stopped, as if bowing goodbye, and Milo stepped off into a patch of dew-covered grass. As he turned to look one last time, he saw his reflection in the river, but younger, lighter, as if the water had peeled away some invisible heaviness. And when he returned to the golden chamber, the smooth spiral stone pulsed gently in his pocket alongside the golden leaf, the silver ribbon, and the iron flame key. The sphere above glowed with a new softness like moonlight through fog. The remaining doors shimmered quietly, each holding a memory of Velwick's dreaming heart. Still curled up and listening, my dear? That makes this old storyteller smile. Let's open the next door together now, the fifth one, marked with a tiny feather and a quill, etched so finely it almost disappeared when the light shifted. When Milo reached out and touched it, he felt a soft tickle on his fingertips, as if pages were flipping in a breeze only he could feel. The door opened with a quiet hush, like the sound of a book being opened for the first time after years on a dusty shelf. And Milo stepped into a library that stretched endlessly in every direction. Not a cold or towering one, mind you, but warm, round, and filled with nooks and corners made for curling up and getting lost. The walls were wood, dark and smooth, lined with shelves bowed from the weight of countless books. Some were thick, bound in leather with golden embossing. Others were paper thin with hand-drawn covers and spines that creaked when touched. Lanterns floated through the air, casting a golden glow and dancing shadows across the ceiling like stars that had learned how to whisper. As Milo wandered between the shelves, he noticed something strange. Each book he touched opened not to pages of text, but to memories, stories once told in this town and forgotten. He read about a girl who used to write poems and hide them in the cracks of the bakery wall, about a quiet old man who taught birds to mimic lullabies, about a boy who tried to build wings out of scrap wood and silk because he dreamed of flying over the hills beyond Velwick. These weren't just tales. They were hearts pressed into paper. As Milo gently closed each book, the stories didn't vanish. They flowed from the pages and became small glowing orbs that floated upward, adding their light to the library's ceiling like new stars being born. In the center of the room stood a desk, small, simple, and covered in ink blotches and curled paper. On it lay an unfinished letter written in delicate cursive, addressed to whoever still remembers. Milo read the first lines and felt a pull in his chest, the kind of ache you feel when you realize something beautiful was once lost. As he reached the end, a quill lifted gently from the inkwell and drew a symbol in the air, a feather within a circle. From it dropped a bookmark, aged and golden, marked with the same feather symbol. Milo caught it, and the library began to fade, book by book, shelf by shelf, as if it were closing up for the night. Back in the golden chamber, the bookmark felt warm in his hand. Now there were 5 pieces tucked inside his pocket: the golden leaf, the silver ribbon, the iron key, the spiral stone, and the feathered bookmark. Above him, the dream sphere pulsed steadily, glowing like a lantern guiding a traveler home. And still, more doors remained, each waiting quietly like unopened chapters in a book only Milo could read. Still here, my little star? That's what I like to hear. Now let Grandpa open the 6th door with you, the one that shimmered like confetti caught in the sunlight, marked by a tiny mask and a bell carved into its wooden face. When Milo touched it, the air around him filled with the scent of spun sugar, warm bread, and wild flowers crushed under dancing feet. The door didn't swing open. It burst open like a curtain lifting at the start of a play, and Milo stepped right into a golden square drenched in music, laughter, and joy. It was evening in Velwick, frozen in time during one of its grand spring festivals, the Festival of the Lantern Bloom, when the town once celebrated light, renewal, and dreams awakened. The sky overhead glowed a soft peach, fading into deep plum, and paper lanterns of every color drifted gently above like sleepy fireflies. Booths lined the cobbled streets, selling warm tarts, hand-carved trinkets, and cups of spiced berry tea. Musicians played tunes that made your feet move before your heart even caught up. Children ran with painted cheeks and cotton ribbons streaming behind them, while old couples waltzed slowly in the square like it was their first dance all over again. Milo wandered through the festival and felt a strange sensation, not like watching, but remembering. The townsfolk, while cheerful and bright, were translucent, like warm ghosts of a memory the town refused to let fade. One little girl offered him a flower crown, and when he bent to receive it, she smiled and vanished like mist in sunlight, leaving the crown real and fragrant in his hands. At the heart of the square stood a grand tree, its bark pale silver and its branches filled with glowing lanterns, each with a name written on it. For those who dreamed and dared, a sign read. As Milo stepped close, one lantern flickered wildly and descended toward him. Inside, it was a folded note, an old wish written by someone who once hoped the town would never forget how to celebrate life, no matter how quiet or grown up it became. The lantern floated into his hands and melted into a golden bell charm, warm and light, chiming softly even without wind. Milo tucked the charm into his pouch alongside the leaf, the ribbon, the key, the stone, and the bookmark. As the music softened and the stalls gently faded, Milo found himself once again in the golden chamber, standing quietly before the remaining doors. Above him, the dream sphere now spun slowly, casting long, soft shadows on the walls, as if telling him that every memory was beginning to glow brighter, to mean more. He was no longer collecting tokens. He was piecing together the forgotten soul of Velwick. Come close now, little one, and let the rain settle deep in your heart. Grandpa's voice may be soft, but the last story still waits, tucked away in the quietest corner of Velwick's dreaming soul. Milo turned to the seventh and final door. Unlike the others, this one bore no carvings, just smooth, aged wood, polished by time and silence. It was cool beneath his hand, and when he touched it, there was no sound, no shimmer, no burst of light. Instead, the golden chamber simply faded like dew evaporating in morning sun, and Milo found himself standing atop a wide hill under a sky so vast and still it felt like time itself had paused to listen. There were no buildings here, no people, just wild grasses swaying in a hush of wind, a single weathered bench, and a tree with leaves that glowed faintly like breathing embers. The town of Velwick could be seen below, a quilt of memories stitched across gentle slopes, now whole and glowing softly. This was the town's heart, not its past, not its future, but its center, where everything that had ever mattered was quietly remembered. Milo sat on the bench, and the silence around him wasn't empty. It was full of stories told, of songs once sung, of laughter carried off by wind, and dreams whispered into the night. He pulled the small treasures from his pocket, the golden leaf of childhood wonder, the silver ribbon of shared joy, the iron key of courage, the spiral stone of reflection, the feathered bookmark of forgotten stories, and the festival bell of celebration. One by one, they floated from his hands and settled at the base of the glowing tree. The tree responded not with a flash, but a deep warmth that filled the air, as if the town itself had exhaled in peace. The leaves shimmered, and a soft hum surrounded Milo, not from outside, but from within. Velwick was remembering again, and in doing so, it was healing. Milo stood, his heart full but light. The bench, the hill, the tree, they began to dissolve into golden mist, not vanishing, but becoming part of everything. And as he stepped forward, the dream sphere returned above him, no longer spinning, but still glowing with the memories he had restored. He was back in his bed, the dawn beginning to stretch across his window pane, the rain still gentle on the roof. But something had changed. The town, when he walked it again, would no longer feel forgotten, because the dream of Velwick was alive once more, in him. So, my dear, close your eyes now. Let your breath fall soft and steady. Let Velwick drift through your dreams tonight, the lanterns floating high, the festival music fading sweetly, and the quiet hilltop waiting just beyond the stars. Grandpa will be right here when the rain returns tomorrow. Good night.